Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your Wednesday with us. We're going to begin in Cuba, where Hurricane Melissa made its second landfall as an extremely dangerous Category 3 storm just after 3 a.m. this morning. Packing winds up to 120 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center warns of flooding, rains, and dangerous storm surge for the eastern part of the island. Cuba's president said hundreds of thousands of people were evacuated, and a hurricane warning remains in place for much of the country.
The storm already pulverized parts of Jamaica, where more than 500,000 people are without power. Hurricane Melissa made landfall there yesterday as a devastating Category 5 storm. Maximum sustained winds reached up to 185 miles an hour, ripping the roofs off buildings. Many neighborhoods, like the one you see here on your screen, are underwater. Jamaica's prime minister says they're trying to get relief to the places hit hardest as soon as possible. He offered an early assessment of the damage.
Jamaica has sustained a major impact. The corridor of damage is significant. We have lost hospitals. Certainly, our road infrastructure would have been damaged, which would include bridges, gullies, and waterways.
We will have the latest forecast and an update on relief efforts in Jamaica. We're going to start with NBC News reporter Ed Augustin, who is live in Havana, Cuba. Ed, good morning. We hope you and your team are staying safe. Just tell us, what are the conditions like right now? Are you already hearing early reports of any damage?
Well, I'm speaking to you from Havana, which is far away from eastern Cuba, where the hurricane is currently rolling over and causing massive destruction in all likelihood. Here it's calm. There, people are contending with a Category 3 hurricane that is tearing through the country. It entered over Santiago de Cuba. That's the country's second biggest city. At round about just gone 3 in the morning. It's still tearing through the country, and Cubans in that part of the country are going to have to be contending with the massive hurricane for a few hours yet. It's too early for damage reports. As you can see, it's dark behind me, and in the east of Cuba, it's dark without any power, without any internet, without any communications, and so it's way too early to have any sense of the magnitude. What we do know is that upwards of 735,000 people were evacuated. That is a huge logistical operation, and that's surely going to increase the safety of a lot of people. And we also have reports that the army, in early hours this morning, were rescuing one group of people, according to state media reports, from flooding. And we have no idea whether or not those people made it out alive.
And more than 730,000 people were evacuated from their homes in Cuba. Good news when people heed those evacuation warnings. Tell us about that and the resources available to them.
Well, it's one of the defining things about Cuba, and it's a complete paradox, right? I'm speaking to you in a country that literally cannot keep the lights on. After a day of reporting yesterday, I went home, no light. Woke up this morning, no light. And yet this same country that's plagued by potholes, food shortages, increasing public health problems with dengue fever because there's not enough money, it would seem, to be able to even fumigate, is still able to mobilize huge resources, buses, lorries, state workers to evacuate that amount of people. The population in Cuba probably these days is less than 10 million. 735,000 is a huge proportion of 10 million, about 7%. And I think simply that there's two reasons for it. First of all, there's a long-standing political commitment to evacuate people, not just telling people that they have to evacuate, but providing the means for them to evacuate. And second of all, because of the structure of the Cuban economy, the state owns an awful lot of resources. It has the schools, it has the universities, it has shelters. And that same economic structure, leads to a whole load of problems. Economically, very inefficient economy. A lot of people would say it would lead to a lack of liberty on the island. But when it comes to hurricanes, the resources are there and they're made available. And we'll see in the coming hours whether or not that has saved as many lives as it normally does.
Ed, we'll continue to check in with you. Please continue to stay safe, and thank you for your reporting this morning.
Now let's bring in Sarah Shaw. She is the director of the American Friends of Jamaica, and she lives in Kingston with her family. Sarah, good morning. Thank you very much for making some time to speak with us. I know it's been a long few days for you and your family. First, how are you doing this morning, and what are you seeing and hearing on the ground?
We personally are incredibly fortunate that we have come through this relatively unscathed. The rest of the country is in really dire straits. We've seen video out of Black River, St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, parishes more to the west of us. Of course, Montego Bay, which is our tourism capital, was really hit hard last night as the storm exited the island. So while I personally am in good shape, the rest of the country is in very dire straits.
I know your organization just announced a $1 million matching fund to help with relief and recovery efforts there in Jamaica. Just what's the top priority now that the storm has passed? How do you start to pick up the pieces after a disaster of this magnitude?
So yes, our board of directors has committed $1 million to match donations that come in through our website at www.theafj.org. Our primary focus is partnering with boots on the ground organizations. We've got incredible relationships with people like the Global Empowerment Mission, Food for the Poor. JetBlue has been an incredible sponsor for us, committing airfare and the means to get people to Jamaica to help. San Marina Foundation has stepped up, as well as Dennis Shipping, which is a local New York organization. So the primary focus for us is to empower folks who are down here, who are on the ground, they know what's going on, to get them the resources they need to deliver resources to people that are left without.
What resources do people need the most right now, do you think?
It's so hard to say. I mean, the video that's coming out, people have lost roofs, right? So obviously timber, zinc, like tarpaulins in the meantime, obviously food, they're going to need basically everything. People, once your roof blows away, the rain is torrential, everything you own is soaked, your mattress, any furniture you have. It's really complete devastation for a lot of the island.
Meteorologists have said this is the most powerful hurricane of this season, and we know it's the most powerful to ever hit Jamaica. The last storm to hit Jamaica this hard caused nearly $10 billion in damage. Obviously, it's early right now, but based on what you're hearing, how long do you think it will be before we even start to get a clear picture of the damage?
Well, one thing about Jamaicans, we are a resilient people. We are born from struggle, and the spirit of the people here is just indomitable. I have no doubt that the country is going to pull together. People have an incredible sense of community. Everybody, will pull together for each other. And we're also confident that Jamaicans and friends of Jamaica in the diaspora will come together and help however we can. That said, this storm has hit on the shoulder of our high season for tourism. It's hit our tourism capital. This is going to be a very, very difficult path to recovery. But when you look at Beryl a year on, I guess we're a year and a half on, there's been incredible progress, places on the South Coast, you wouldn't even know that it happened. So I'm confident that the country is going to come together and respond in short order.
Really quickly, what can people do if they're watching right now and they want to help with relief efforts?
So obviously for us, the priority is to amass the funds. We'd love to be able to match that full $1 million. People can donate at www.theafj.org. There are also a number of other trusted, charities and response agencies that are doing work on the ground. That's a great place for money as well. I think in the immediate aftermath of any disaster, money is really what's needed. Supplies, things like that can come later, but right now we're staging an airlift to arrive in Jamaica, hopefully this week as soon as the airport's open. I think I heard this morning that might be tomorrow. So cash is king, supplies are great. Please keep us in your thoughts, root for us, come visit us, and we're sending one love from Jamaica.
All right, Sarah Shaw, we've heard a lot about how great that community is over the past 24 hours. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we're thinking about you and your family.
Thanks.
All right, NBC meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us now with the latest on Melissa's path.
Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Still going to be looking at impacts from Melissa here for at least the next couple of days in other locations, of course. We've still got these hurricane warnings, tropical storm warnings in effect across parts of the Caribbean, but specifically making that second landfall around 3 o'clock this morning in eastern Cuba. It's still maintaining Category 3 strength. So even still, after dealing with the terrain of Jamaica, now dealing with the terrain of Cuba, I likely think we'll be talking about a Cat 3, Cat 2 here, maybe some weakening in some locations. You can kind of see that that eye isn't quite as defined because it is interacting with the land of Cuba. Now, we've got it moving northeast at 12 miles per hour and still 115 mile per hour winds associated with this system. Likely Cat 3, maybe Cat 2 here as we get later into the day. It'll start to pull away from Cuba, and they'll see much of that rain kind of shift over parts of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. But between now and then, we'll pick up some really ample amounts, anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rain across that region. We'll see the storm surge be a potential for folks in the Bahamas as well as Turks and Caicos. And then by the time we get into Thursday, early morning hours, we're going to start to see this system well off kind of in the distance for folks across the Caribbean. But we're not done looking at potential impacts. We're still going to see the plan be for Bermuda to see some kind of impacts. We'll see it kind of cross near into the region of that island here as we get into tomorrow evening. Meanwhile, we've got a whole lot of tropical moisture that's going to kind of feed into this system that's working across the eastern United States. So they're not connected with Melissa per se, but it is giving it a whole lot of moisture. So it's going to be a soggy one for folks across that region. Just heads up for tomorrow. By the time we get into Friday, we'll see that northeastern storm kind of work its way into Canada and depart. And Melissa will become post-tropical, and we will be kind of wrapping up talking about Melissa. But between now and then, some really impressive rainfall amounts. This was, of course, a big story with what folks were dealing with in Jamaica, guys. We've still got additional rainfall that we're expecting across Cuba, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, and eventually Bermuda. So far from done, but improvements for folks in Jamaica for sure.
So many places impacted by this hurricane.
Really something.
Thanks, Angie. Appreciate it. Let's get to some other news now. President Trump is continuing his tour of Asia. He arrived in South Korea overnight ahead of tomorrow's high-stakes meeting with China's President Xi.
The president spoke earlier at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit before being awarded South Korea's highest honor. But the visit comes a day after North Korea carried out another cruise missile test.
NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now from the South Korean capital of Seoul. So, Janice, first of all, talk to us about the president's visit to South Korea, his meetings with President Lee, what was discussed, and why was he given this honor?
Well, a trade deal, a gold crown, and protesters have all headlined President Trump's visit to South Korea so far. He arrived earlier today and told regional leaders and CEOs attending APEC that a trade deal with South Korea will be finalized very soon. One of the key sticking points seems to be how South Korea's $350 billion in investment is going to be put into the U.S. South Korea wants it to come from mostly private companies and industries like shipbuilding, whereas the Trump administration would prefer to have it as direct investment from South Korea's government. In the meantime, he was given a replica of a gold crown, an ancient gold crown, as well as the country's highest order. This is the first time it's been given to a U.S. president. Officials say it's to acknowledge his opening of dialogue on the Korean Peninsula during his first term. There were protesters outside the museum where the ceremony and lunch were happening, though. Some of them are supporting President Trump, but several other protesters are opposed to more South Korean investment going to the U.S. when that funding could be better used here at home. Joe?
Janice, also the president had signaled he was interested in a potential meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen during this trip. What do we know about the latest missile test by North Korea? How did the president react? Is that part of this?
Well, President Trump had been sending several signals that he was interested in talking with North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. Kim has never acknowledged those overtures, nor has he expressed any interest in talking with the U.S. president. What he did do was carry out 2 missile tests in the past week. The stronger signal from Pyongyang may have actually come in Russia several days ago. That's where North Korea's foreign minister met with Russia's foreign minister, and they released this statement reaffirming relations between the two countries. As for the missile tests, they're being seen as a sign that North Korea remains a threat, and that threat is no less diminished.
Janice, let's look ahead to tomorrow's meeting with China's President Xi. Clearly, trade's going to be high on the agenda. From Wall Street to farm fields here, Americans are paying close attention. So what's at stake here, and what have we heard so far, both from the president and about China when it comes to this meeting?
China has confirmed that the meeting is going to happen. So that is a key step. And there are so many major issues facing these two sides: fentanyl, rare earths, American soybeans, energy, Taiwan. Here's what President Trump said about a possible trade deal earlier today.
I think we're going to have a deal. I think it'll be a good deal for both. And that's really a great result. You know, that's better than fighting and going through all sorts of problems and, you know, no reason for it. I think it's going to be a great deal for both. So I'll be meeting him tomorrow. A lot of people are interested. They're also interested in what we're doing, but they're interested in that. I can tell you a lot. The world is watching. And I think we'll have something that's very exciting for everybody.
It's highly unlikely that the deal is going to come out of this meeting tomorrow. What we're more likely to see is a lowering of the temperature between the two sides, a de-escalation, similar to the pattern that we've seen in relations between the U.S. and China over the past years. Things have ramped up and then scaled back, with both sides looking for negotiating points. Joe and Savannah?
Janice reporting from Seoul. Janice, thank you so much.
Well, in Washington, pressure is building on lawmakers to reopen the government as the shutdown begins its fifth week today. Yesterday, for the 13th time, the Senate failed to pass a Republican-backed funding bill. The final vote count was 55 to 45, with no new Democrats voting in favor.
Hours before that vote, union members from the National Air Traffic Controllers Association handed out pamphlets at airports across the country urging an end to the shutdown. It was the first day a majority of them, along with some other federal workers, missed their first full paychecks.
Every air traffic controller across the country wakes up to a paycheck that says $0.00. November 1st, their rent's going to be due, their mortgage is going to be due, car payments are going to be due. Regardless of what your financial circumstances are, you shouldn't have to worry about whether or not you're going to be able to meet those obligations. Air traffic controllers especially shouldn't have to worry about when they go to work to do the job that we do that already has a stressful day-to-day impact. They shouldn't have to worry about how they're going to pay their bills.
For more, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona. Mel, good morning. So we have at least two major unions, the Federal Workers Union and now this one, the Air Traffic Controllers, calling on senators to pass this continuing resolution. I mean, it clearly didn't sway Democrats ahead of yesterday's vote. What happened with that and with those meetings that we talked about yesterday that happened on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, good morning, guys. There are no signs of progress right now towards reopening the government. And in fact, most of the conversations on Capitol Hill right now are about whether and how to address certain pain points, like re-upping SNAP, which is set to expire at the end of this week, or paying certain groups of federal workers, like air traffic controllers. Now, initially, the GOP leadership was planning to put some of those standalone bills on the floor this week to address some of those pain points. But after hearing from Vice President J.D. Vance yesterday during their Senate lunch, they're not walking away from that strategy. And the reason is because Vance communicated to that group of Senate Republicans that the White House believes those bills would alleviate too much pressure on Democrats to come to the table. However, I did ask Vance following that meeting whether the troops are still going to get paid on Friday. Here's what he had to say.
We believe that we can continue to pay the troops on Friday. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to pay everybody because we've been handed a very bad hand by the Democrats. This is one of the reasons why you've seen some layoffs in the federal workforce. We do think that we can continue paying the troops, at least for now. But we've got food stamp benefits that are set to run out in a week. We're trying to keep as much open as possible. We just need the Democrats to actually help us out.
Meanwhile, Democrats are still holding firm in their position, and this is despite the fact that they are facing new pressure from union groups to abandon their position. Union groups, of course, typically strong allies of the Democratic Party, so no signs of movement as of right now.
And Mal, the vice president mentioned food stamps, SNAP program there. We know Democratic leaders from several states filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration yesterday over plans to withhold food aid under the SNAP program. Those benefits, again, they'd expire on Saturday. As many as 42 million people rely on them, desperately need those funds. What are Democrats arguing in this lawsuit?
So at the center of this lawsuit is a contingency fund that Congress appropriated. Essentially, it's an emergency pot of money. There's about $5 to $6 billion in that pot of money. But the USDA argues they're not allowed to legally spend that money because that's supposed to be for emergencies, disasters, and they're calling this a manufactured crisis by Democrats. So now these Democratic states are suing. They say the administration is legally obligated to pay these funds, and they're crying foul and accusing the Trump administration action, essentially, of trying to maximize the pain to get Democrats to fold in their position.
Mel, we did see a rare display of bipartisanship from senators yesterday on the issue of tariffs. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there was a vote last night, a bipartisan vote to adopt a resolution that would block President Trump's tariffs on Brazil. This was a bipartisan vote. 5 Senate Republicans actually voted in support of it, which is more than we've seen in the past when they had some of these votes. And they're going to have 2 more votes at some point this week blocking additional tariffs that Trump has implemented. However, this is mostly a symbolic vote because the House is not going to take this up. And President Trump, of course, would likely not sign something like this. However, it is a sign of the growing uneasiness right now in the Republican Party over Trump's trade agenda and how much it is hurting many of their home states, guys.
All right, Mel, thank you very much.
In economic news later today, the Federal Reserve is widely expected to cut interest rates for a second time this year.
Wall Street is heavily anticipating the central bank is going to cut rates by a quarter point, the same move it made at last month's meeting.
Investopedia's editor-in-chief, friend of the show, Caleb Silver, joins us now to talk more about this. So, Caleb,
Hello.
Tell us more about why we are expecting this cut. What are the things the Fed is seeing in the economy right now leading us down this path?
Well, it hasn't seen a lot because of the government shutdown, but it gets anecdotal data. It gets data from the 12 regional banks, and it does its own private surveys. And what it's seeing is a slowdown in the labor market. That's why the Fed is concerned right now. Typically, the Fed cuts rates when it fears that we're in a recession or about to head into a recession. We're not, but the labor market has slowed significantly. Private companies have only added around 20,000 jobs a month. We know from the BLS actual job survey, we're only adding like 25,000 jobs a month. Meanwhile, we've heard big layoffs from companies like Amazon, from Microsoft, from Starbucks, et cetera. That's the Fed's concern. That's why they'll cut rates. 99.9% chance the Fed cuts rates today in 6 hours and 39 minutes. 100% chance it's not enough for the president.
Thank you for doing that. I was going to ask if we didn't get there anyway. What do we think we might learn about the rates to come? There's always sort of this reading of the tea leaves after Chair Powell's comments.
Yeah. At the last meeting, we got a signal from the Fed's dot plot, the most boring yet the most important chart in all of economics, that showed that it's probably going to cut rates 2 times this year. 2 baby cuts, these quarter-point cuts. We're definitely going to get one today. I'm pretty sure about that. The question is, will we get one in December? But the path forward for rates is down and to the right. If you look out to 2026, the end of 2026, rates are going to be down between 3 and 4%. So if we don't get it in December, we'll definitely get one at the next meeting. And we know Fed Chair Powell's meetings are coming to an end. His term expires in May. So only about 3 or 4 meetings with him as Fed Chair.
We know these cuts are incremental, but for everyday Americans, what does this all mean, especially as the months go by?
Yeah, borrowing costs are going down, and you can already see it a little bit in the mortgage market. It's not as sensitive to Fed rates, but it is sensitive to the 10-year Treasury, but also credit card APRs. Those have been around 23, 24%. Those have been rather high. Those are coming down. Car loans are coming down. Flip side of this, though, is the money you earn in the bank is also coming down.
Right,
so CDs at 4%, those days are over. Money markets at 3, 4%. Those days are coming to an end. Lock in your high-yield savings or your CDs if you can right now, because rates are heading lower.
Always the pros and cons. All right.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.